You know, getting a new home, it's like the ultimate dream, right? It's your sanctuary, the one place you're supposed to be safe from the world. But for some people, that dream, it just curdles into a nightmare. What happens when the danger isn't outside, but right next door? Or maybe even closer? We're about to dive into 3 true stories where the horror came home.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. You lock your doors at night, you pull the curtains closed, you feel safe. But are you really? These stories we're about to get into, they're going to challenge that feeling in a big way, exploring what happens when the one place you should feel secure becomes the source of your deepest fears.
So, our first story kicks off on one of those streets that looks like it's straight out of a movie. You know the kind? A couple loves their neighborhood so much that when the bigger house right next door goes up for sale, they jump on it. They end up selling their old place to what seems like a totally normal Polish couple, and everything feels, well, perfect. But that suburban quiet? Yeah, it's about to get completely shattered.
At first, things were pretty normal. The new neighbors only spoke English, not Dutch like the narrator, but they'd have that kind of pleasant, if a little distant, small talk. But then, the weird stuff started. We're talking loud music, heavy banging sounds coming through the walls at midnight. It was unsettling, a real sign that they had no idea who was living just a few feet away. And let me tell you, this was just the beginning.
Okay, so just look at this timeline. It really shows you how fast this whole thing went off the rails. In month 3, the neighbor's car suddenly shows up, all damaged on both sides. Then by month 5, they're calling the cops for this really bizarre, almost staged-feeling break-in. And then, get this. Just 1 week later, it all just explodes. A violent car crash into their own house and a bloody confrontation, all on the same night. This wasn't some slow burn, you guys. This was a full-on implosion. So try to picture this scene. The neighbor's car literally tears through their own front garden and just smashes into their front door. And then these 2 guys, who look exactly like the ones from that staged break-in a week before, start frantically loading the car with super expensive TVs, speakers, the works. This isn't some quiet, sneaky robbery. No, it's a loud, violent smash and grab for everyone to see. This time, the police are unbelievably fast. They show up in just 7 minutes and catch the guys right in the act. When an officer asks the driver for his ID, the guy says he doesn't have any. And then he does something so incredibly bold, he looks the cop dead in the eye and claims he's the homeowner, even gives the neighbor's real name. Just wow. And here it is. This is the moment everything unravels. This imposter, he was speaking fluent Dutch, okay, with a heavy Polish accent. But the real neighbor, in all the months they lived there, had never, not once, spoken a single word of Dutch to them. The lie just fell apart instantly. So the men try to bolt, there's a police chase, but they get caught. The chaos, though, it is far from over.
So later that night, the doorbell rings. It's the actual neighbor, and he's just unrecognizable. His face is a complete mess, just pulp, one eye swollen shut. His arm is covered in what looks like defensive stab wounds. He looks feral, just broken. But the craziest part? When the police try to get a statement, he just flat out refuses to cooperate. He says nothing, so they have to let him go. The mystery just gets deeper, pointing to this whole criminal underworld that was happening right next door.
All right, let's switch gears to our next story. This one moves away from that kind of external, violent chaos and into a much quieter, more psychological kind of terror. It's about a teenage girl in her new suburban home. Her bedroom is on the ground floor, and it's got this huge window that looks out into the backyard. And here's the key detail. Her closet has these massive mirrored sliding doors, so no matter where she was in the room, the window was always reflected right back at her. The horror here, it starts really subtly. Late at night, she starts hearing things right outside her window. But every single time she brings it up, her family just brushes it off. Oh, it's just the house settling, or you're watching too many scary movies. So she starts to doubt herself, to doubt her own ears. And that kind of gaslighting, that becomes a terror all its own. Just look at this list of clues that were just explained away for years. Shuffling sounds late at night, the really distinct sound of someone breathing just on the other side of the glass, glimpses of movement she'd catch in that closet mirror. Her dad would go check the yard and nothing. But here's the detail that gives me chills. A pattern she noticed. The sounds always stopped in the winter. And why? Because snow would have left tracks. This person wasn't just lurking. They were being careful, methodical. So years go by like this. Then, one night, there's this huge windstorm. She sees her parents sitting in the living room super late, looking really tense. But they just tell her everything's fine. A few minutes later, red and blue lights are flashing outside. A police car is pulling into their driveway. They rush her back to her room, promise they'll explain later. All those years of quiet fear are about to come to a head. So her dad finally explains what happened. He was outside checking for storm damage, and his eyes were drawn to the light coming from her bedroom window. And as his vision adjusted to the dark, what do you think he saw?
He saw a man just standing there, completely motionless, staring directly into her room. When her dad yelled, the man turned, vaulted their back fence like it was nothing, like he'd done it 100 times before, and just vanished. In that one single moment, every fear she ever had, every sound she'd convinced herself was nothing, became horrifyingly real.
And this is where the real psychological damage sinks in. It wasn't just about that one night. It was the horror of looking back and realizing that for years, she was never really alone. Every night she sat in that room, doing homework, reading, she was being watched. The police never found him, which left her with this haunting question of who it was and why.
Okay, our final story is maybe the most invasive of them all. It's about a family who finds a house for a price that's, frankly, a little too good to be true. It needs some work, sure, but it's big, perfect for them and their new baby. Well, they soon discover that low price came with a seriously hidden cost, because some houses don't just have secrets, they have residents.
So the events just start building, one on top of the other, in this deeply unsettling way. First, they come home to find their front door is wide open. But nothing's stolen. Weird. Then, the narrator, her bedroom is in the newly finished basement, hears clear, distinct laughter coming from inside the wall. And finally, the thing that just breaks them. She's home alone, babysitting her baby sister, and she hears heavy footsteps on the baby monitor, in the room with her, followed by someone going, shh, to the crying baby. Totally terrified after the baby monitor incident, she does the only thing she can think of. She grabs her dad's unloaded rifle for protection, grabs her sister, and barricades them both in a room until the police show up. But when the officers get there and search the entire house, top to bottom, they find absolutely no one. The family is left in this impossible, terrifying situation with zero explanation. So the police are about to leave, and the dad asks this really strange question. He points to this big bookshelf that's built into the wall of his daughter's basement bedroom, and he asks the officers, "Did you check behind that?" The cops are, confused, but the father insists. And what they find, it's pure nightmare fuel. The bookshelf isn't a bookshelf, it's a door. And behind it is this tiny hidden room tucked away between the house's pipes, and inside, there's undeniable proof someone had been living there. Food wrappers, a cup that had gone missing from their kitchen a week earlier, a switchblade, and a half-eaten apple. And they had an escape route all planned out through an open basement window. But that wasn't even the worst of it. A few days later, the narrator goes into the secret room herself to look around, and she finds this tiny drilled hole in the wall of that hidden space. When she looks through it, she realizes it gives a direct, perfect view of her bed and her dresser. Someone wasn't just living in their walls. They were watching her every move. So let's tie this all together. These three stories, as different as they are, all tap into the exact same primal fear, the violation of your sanctuary, your home. They show us that sometimes the locks on our doors are completely meaningless. It doesn't matter if the threat is criminal violence next door, an obsessive watcher in your yard, or an intruder who's already inside. You can see here how each story really attacks a different kind of security. With the neighbor, it was a threat to your physical safety from organized crime right there on your street. The watcher? Well, that was an attack on your psychological privacy, the very idea that you can be alone in your own home. And the intruder? That was a violation of your personal space itself, proving the walls meant nothing. 3 different nightmares, but all stemming from one core fear. And really, that's what we're left with, isn't it? These stories force us to look at something we'd rather not, that our sense of security is actually pretty fragile. It makes you wonder, right? As you're sitting there right now, listening to this, how well do you really know the walls around you?